The next question is, compared to other states and other Western countries, California incarcerates a high percentage of its residents. Given the serious state budget problems, there is likely to be substantial pressure to decrease costs, including those associated with the state's justice system. As a Superior Court judge, would you have tools or discretion that could help reduce the costs of our judicial system? Ms. Ritchie, you're first this time.
I think one of the important things that I've already brought up is helping people to be able to resolve their disputes early. Even when I was a district attorney, I brought those same kind of skills to the bench. If I saw, one of the assignments I had was family support for parents who had paid no child support of any kind to their family for more than a year. That assignment was an assignment where people occasionally had to go to jail, and many cases were tried. And what I decided to do was to say to each and every parent who had not, and it was almost always fathers, who had not been paying their child support, look, why don't you go ahead and plead guilty because you haven't been paying. Well, I don't like her. The probation department will set the amount at an amount that you can pay. You don't have to go have a family lawyer go back into court and change it for you. And I made it so that they didn't have to go through jail, they could be able to resolve it without going to jail. And that's the kind of thinking you have to go through in trying to resolve things so that you get to the result you want without having to use the ultimate imprisonment every single time.
Thank you. Mr. Liroff, you're next.
I can't figure out how we're going forward and backward, but okay.
It's random. It's meant to give everybody a chance to go.
Oh, it surprised me. I think the foremost concern I have in dealing with the incarceration rate, when I started as a young lawyer, the incarceration rate in California was 25,000. And now it's coming up to about 200,000. Clearly things have gotten out of whack. But it's not as a result of the courts. It's the legislature that has passed a number of laws, some of them very wise and appropriate, that have drastically increased the incarceration rate. Nevertheless, public safety, I think, is vastly important. That aside, I am concerned about incarceration for just incarceration's sake. I think that alternatives in nonviolent cases which truly seek to rehabilitate and prevent future crime are very wise measures and something that I would be very interested in. The court can't print money, and so it's difficult for the court to take particular measures that increase revenue or decrease spending. But what they do have to do, and most importantly, is even in times of increasing pressures, to guarantee that justice is delivered to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Valencia.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. And again, I have to agree with Mr. Liroff because there is a responsibility that the legislature needs to step up. They pass a lot of laws to sometimes respond to public outcry for imprisonment for various crimes, but they look at it in one with one point of view, myopically, and they don't think about how these particular programs are going to be implemented and how the imprisonment is going to be paid for. I think the one thing that the judges can do, and that's what I try to do whenever I am pronouncing sentence on an individual, I try to look at the different programs that are available, whether they're drug courts or whether they're domestic violence treatment courts or some sort of substance abuse program. There are alternatives out there that are more effective and less costly to the taxpayer, and that's what we as judges have to be willing and able to do, and I think I'd be able to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Pitzker.
First of all, I don't think you can put the blame on either the legislature or the judiciary for the high volume of people going into the prisons. We have a very serious crime rate, and it's my opinion that that is due to a breakdown in basic family values, which is a social problem that goes way beyond the judges. However, with that said, judges can help rehabilitate some people. As I mentioned before, I'm in drug court trying to rehabilitate some of the drug offenders. As a judge, I can continue to do the same. I'm in front of a judge named Robert Foley, who really truly cares and reaches out to these drug offenders, and the people really appreciate it. However, you can't force rehabilitation on anybody. It has to come from within. You can rehabilitate those who want to be rehabilitated. You can help those, as a judge, I can help those who want to be helped, and I will do that. But you can't force it on them, and just because you're going to start a bunch of new programs isn't going to solve the problem. We still have to get back to the social problem of rebuilding the family structure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boyarsky.
Public safety must come first. When we speak of incarceration, we must think about protecting ourselves, members of our family. My wife, Liana, just came into the auditorium. She's in the back with my beautiful 3-year-old daughter, Natalie. For me, protecting the community is about protecting my family. That probably explains why I'm endorsed by so many law enforcement groups. Now, there are 175,000 people, approximately, incarcerated in California, and that is horrible. The societal costs, the economic costs of that are enormous. But can any of you imagine a judge sitting at a sentencing of a child molester or a rapist and say, I'm only going to give this person 5 years because it's just too expensive or there's just too many people in prison already? Of course not. I'm in favor of drug treatment, and I believe that prison is typically not the best place for nonviolent offenders. However, when it comes to people who hurt children, who hurt women, who harm people, prison is the place, and that's why I am law enforcement's #1 choice for judge.
Thank you. I'm going to try to fit in 2 more questions and leave time for closing statements. So if it's all right with our timekeeper, I'd like to give 1 minute per answer for the next 2 questions. Then we can get 2 in, I think. Okay? The next question is, what is your position on nonviolent drug offenders? And Mr. Valencia, you're first.
Thank you. As I was saying earlier, there are programs, and I think very useful and effective programs that this county has taken the leadership in, and our courts have taken a particularly active role in making sure that when there is a substance abuse issue, and there's no denying that drugs are a scourge on our society, but there is no sense in imprisoning people who have these drug dependency problems. And our courts are very in tune with what's the appropriate type of program to offer these. I would continue to make sure that those continue to be followed, because this is what the voters voted for and approved. So I would continue that policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boyarsky.
I support the current Superior Court's programs for drug court and drug treatment. As I stated in my previous answer, I don't believe that prison is typically the best place for nonviolent drug offenders. I believe that people who suffer through addiction do need help, that it costs less to all of us as a society to provide treatment than it does to provide incarceration. If somebody is addicted to drugs, and in order to support their drug habit, they go out and stab someone, that person is not deserving of a drug treatment bed that should go to someone who did not stab someone. But in terms of nonviolent drug offenders, I support that concept, and as a judge, I will work within the programs that our fine Superior Court has established for drug treatment.
Thank you. Ms. Ritchie.
When I was a district attorney, one of the things that I did was join the board of Pathways, which is a drug rehabilitation program. And I think that it's really, as all of us, I think, agree so far, certainly better drug rehabilitation, giving those people who finally come to the point that they are willing to give up their drug addiction every possible support and not making them wait. There's an elderly man at church who's addicted to drugs, and he has had to wait for sometimes a month at a time before he's able to get any help from the county programs. I think drug court is wonderful. I think that's the way to do it, but you've got to have more community resources.
Thank you. Mr. Liroff.
I'm in favor of it. I think that it's the law. It was passed by the electorate. But I think this discussion illustrates what I was talking about before, the importance of experience. If you're going to go on an airplane, who do you want to be the pilot? Do you want the rookie or the intern? Or do you want someone who's been experienced and been doing that for many, many years? Now, one of my colleagues up here made a point of talking about how he would not allow somebody who committed a violent offense go into drug court. Well, that's the problem, because it's the law. And if the person had familiarity with the law, they would know that that person would never qualify for that program. The law doesn't allow people who have committed violent offenses to go into drug court. Drug court is a very effective thing. One of my big supporters was in this county from the outset, Judge Cole. We've spent a long time talking about the efforts that they've made. I think it's a very successful thing. I think we should look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pitzker?
Yes, I've been in drug court for the last 2.5 years trying to help certain drug offenders get out of the system. However, the problem with your question is it's really not broad enough, because it's more than just a nonviolent drug offender. You have to look at the whole person. If you have somebody who has strike priors for robberies, rapes, or murders, and they come into my courtroom, I'm going to want to send them away for 25 to life on the strike. I want to get that guy off the streets forever, because that's the guy who's doing the burglaries, who's doing the muggings of the little old ladies. And if I can get him off the streets for a simple drug possession, yes. However, if you have straight nonviolent drug offenders and that's it, they're just drug addicts, let's get them into the program and get them out of the system. And that's what we're doing right now. Thank you.
All right, our last question is, what do you feel is the best way to address the problem of recurring crimes and gangs? What do you believe is the solution? For this question, Mr. Pitzker, you're first.
The solution with the recurring gangs and whatnot is, like I said before, you got to change the family structure. You got to get back to basics. You got to get families involved with their kids, helping their kids get to school. They're teaching their kids some morals. We have a total breakdown in basic family morals. We need that. We need to have jobs for the kids. We have to teach them how to work. We have to teach them the value of going out and earning their own paycheck rather than going and stealing or robbing or whatever. So it gets back to the basics. It's much, much broader than just the judicial system. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ritchie, you're next.
I think that actually the way to handle gangs, and I agree with Mr. Pitzker, it's, as I said, if you start with, if you look at the whole system and you look at children who are being abused or who are being neglected, you look at gangs, you look at juvenile delinquents, really supporting the family is what is necessary. And we do have parenting classes available, and we need to be able to get those things that can be handled by the family, that once you're having to do it from the outside, with a meat axe, it's very, very difficult to break into that kind of a culture.
Thank you. Mr. Liroff.
I'm running for the Superior Court. I don't want to be a social worker. I believe that there are systemic things that the courts can do to improve. There are things that the courts can do to make a difference. I do think, and I think everyone on this panel is going to agree, and most of the people in the audience, that by the time they're in their 20s, it's way too late. I think what you have to do is take the opportunity in juvenile court, both in delinquency, and I hope you appreciate there's two types of of courts over their delinquency and dependency. But there has to be an effort, a concerned effort, to see if you can make a difference in a young person's life that will steer him away from a bad course that he's going. If he stays on that path, he'll be in adult court, and I don't think there's much we can do about that. At that point, public safety is paramount. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boyarsky?
The best way to prevent gang violence and recidivists, I think, is to make sure that young people have resources for education, make sure that people have jobs. I think that's generally how you can reduce the crime rate, and that's how you can reduce gang activity. Now, what can a Superior Court judge do to make sure that people have access to education and jobs? Well, probably not a great deal. What I think, I know what I want in a judge, and I hope it's what you want. You want someone who doesn't think he's necessarily the smartest person wearing a black robe. You want someone who thinks not just with his head, but also with his heart, who cares about people, no matter who they are, no matter where they come from, no matter what struggles they've faced. I will bring that perspective that I brought to my community work for the last 20 years. I'll bring that to my role as a judge on the bench.
Thank you. Mr. Valencia?
The thing that I do in juvenile delinquency court is, first of all, I'm very concerned that there are 70% of the kids who are there are Latino, a smaller part are Asian, African American. These young men and women come, as I said before, from backgrounds that are very impoverished, very deprived, usually from, well, many times from substance abuse families. What I try to tell these young men and women is, especially when it comes to the gang members, I said, listen, where you come from and where I come from are pretty much the same place. You just have to make a decision to take advantage of the opportunities that this country has to offer you. There are no norteños, there are no sureños in the grand scheme of things. We are all from the same bloodline, we're all from the same culture, and you have to do the right thing to make sure you take advantage of these opportunities in this country to become a better person. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will move into the closing statements. Goes quickly. Ms. Ritchie, you're first.
Thank you. Good. So now I get to go first after the lightning round.
Yes, you do.
All right. So one of the things that I noticed in your questions is that almost everyone is concerned with criminal court. Let me assure you that more than half of the cases before the Superior Court are civil, and I am the one who brings that background. So I first wanted to make that clear. I have handled cases, I handled a case against, I've handled class actions on behalf of workers to get their overtime. I handled a case against Taco Bell, which resulted in a $13 million verdict. I handled a case against Wendy's, which resulted in a verdict of over $1 million. I handled a case in a completely different area of law, fighting discrimination against students on the basis of sexual orientation in the Morgan Hill Unified School District. We said, if you will change your policies, you'll never have to pay a dime. They wouldn't do it. We wound up settling for over $1 million, the equivalent of a college education for each of the students involved, and over $1 million total from the school district because they would not settle. I've had a successful career as a civil attorney fighting against discrimination. I'm endorsed by Dolly Sandoval, the mayor of Cupertino, Manuel Valario, the former mayor of Sunnyvale, and I'm endorsed by individual police officers. As a woman, I have had to work harder to succeed in a previously male-dominated field, and I will do that on the court. In Santa Clara County, only a quarter of the judges are women. We need to bring that voice to the Santa Clara County Superior Court.
Thank you. Mr. Pitsker.
Yes, I believe that a good judge should be well-rounded. That is, a person who's living a balanced life physically, mentally, and spiritually, and is also involved in community service. I am involved in community service as I am the vice chair of the Dumbarton Rail Corridor Citizen Advisory Panel, and this is an organization that gives feedback to the Dumbarton Rail Project in regards to environmental impact issues. And for you who don't, those of you who don't know, that's a project that's going to bring commuters from Alameda County over to Santa Clara County and San Mateo County. So that's my big community service project that I'm working on right now. I'm also a member of the Sierra Club. I'm a member of the Nature Conservancy. I practice Aikido, which is a non-violent Japanese martial art, and I'm an active member in my church, the Self-Realization Fellowship. I'm not spending a lot of money on this campaign. I believe my merits speak for themselves. I'm not trying to buy an election. If the voters wish to elect me, that's wonderful. If not, I'm happy to stay right where I am at my job in the DA's office. I consider myself the New York Giants of the judicial race. I'm the underdog, but I will keep fighting till the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Boyarsky.
When I had the opportunity to give my 3-minute opening, I told you that at the close of tonight's forum, I would try and tell you what separates me, what distinguishes me from my esteemed opponents, all of whom are very well-intended and they have ideas for service as a judge. So in my minute and a half remaining, let me just try and summarize what truly separates me from my opponents. I was a supervising deputy district attorney for over 5 years. I was selected to train over 34 deputy district attorneys. I supervised Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Los Altos, Stanford for those years. The reason I was selected for that role is because of my judgment. So in addition to having extensive courtroom experience, as many of my opponents have, I have supervisorial experience managing law offices and individuals. I have criminal law expertise, which I've talked about in terms of hate crimes and sexual predators, but I also worked at a big, prestigious law firm in San Francisco handling complex civil litigation. I did a federal clerkship with one of the most beloved judges in the Bay Area, Judge William Ingram, a longtime Palo Alton. I learned from the master when it comes to judicial temperament, to making sure that even when your ruling is going to disappoint people, make sure that you let them know that you've listened and you've heard them. So that federal clerkship I served back in 1991 is meaningful. I attended UC Berkeley's law school and UC Santa Cruz, and I've mentioned my endorsements, which include 3 members of the Board of Supervisors, Zoe Lofgren, many law enforcement groups, State Senator Elaine Ahlquist, and many other people. Please go to my website, boyarskyforjudge.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Liroff.
You know, about 80% of the governor's appointment in the last 18 years have been for civil lawyers. Indeed, there has been, through retirement, a reduction in the amount of judges who have the type of experience that I have in complex criminal litigation. So as a result, there are cases that you've read about in the paper of reversals based upon judicial error. I don't think that's acceptable. I don't think that's proper. I have the endorsement of not only 36 Superior Court judges, but I have the endorsement of Dolores Carr, who's the boss of 3 of us right here. She's the district attorney. The reason I have that type of endorsement is because of integrity and proven experience. About 3 years ago, I was called to prosecute a case against a law enforcement officer who shot a fleeing man in the back from 75 feet away. Now, nobody wants to prosecute a case like that. DAs work hand in hand with law enforcement officers. Nevertheless, what he did was wrong. He had to be prosecuted. When I ran for judge this year, I went in front of the same law enforcement agencies that Mr. Boyarsky did. And they told me, well, how could you prosecute a cop? And I said, that was my job. I'm supposed to be fair. I'm supposed to be impartial. And they said, no, you prosecuted a cop. I think you should vote for a person for judge based upon their demonstration of personal integrity, of experience, and not based upon the say-so of special interests. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Valencia.
What sets me apart from the other candidates here tonight, I believe, is my judicial experience. I've been on the bench for a year and a half almost, and I've got 6 years of judge pro temping. Before that, I served I ran my law practice here in this county for 20 years, doing both civil and criminal. So Ms. Ritchie is not the only one who has civil experience. In fact, I have extensive civil experience for 20 years. I've done complex litigation myself, personal injury. I've represented victims of drunk drivers, victims of sexual abuse. I have practiced family law, business litigation, and a multitude of substantive legal areas. In the criminal area, I've also done 3 strikes cases, sexual assaults, major narcotics cases. I have trial experience. I have a breadth of experience on both sides of the aisle, doing both civil and criminal. Beyond that, I also have judicial endorsements from 28 sitting judges and commissioners, not retired judges, sitting judges and commissioners. I also have a proven record of community involvement and community service. I served on the San Jose City Elections Commission for 3.5 years. I've been an advocate and a role model for students for the past 20 years, promoting education and access to justice. All of those things, I think, in combination, make me the most balanced and the most diverse candidate for this post. Now, there isn't enough time to tell you about all of the endorsements that I have, but I invite you to visit my website, www.valenciaforjudge.com, and you'll get a complete picture of the person that I am. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the Leagues of Women Voters of Los Altos, Mountain View, and Palo Alto, and our co-sponsoring organizations, the Media Center of Palo Alto and KMVT Community Television of Mountain View, I want to thank the candidates for caring enough about our county to run for office and for participating in this forum tonight. I'd also like to thank you for being such an attentive audience and for asking terrific questions. I'd also like to remind you to vote on June 3rd. Encourage your family and friends and neighbors to do so too. Now we may applaud for all the candidates. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Jay.